Countries with little to no major history of chattel slavery. Now, what is chattel slavery? Chattel slavery is a brutal system where enslaved people are legally rendered to personal property, chattel, of the owner, allowing them to be bought, sold, traded, or inherited as commodities for life. Predominantly in the Americas from the 17th to 19th century, it was a race-based system where status was inherited through the mother, ensuring generational bondage. Now, these are countries where there was no large-scale plantation slavery systems like in the Americas, but doesn't mean that no slavery existed at all. It just wasn't in the form of the brutal system that we saw with African Americans in the Americas. So first of all, let's go with Japan. Japan has no transatlantic style slavery system. Some forms of servitude existed historically, but not race-based chattel slavery. Although ethnicity-based forms of servitude definitely existed, it doesn't have the same scale as those in the Americas. The timeline: there is no major slavery era compared to the Atlantic system, but the reality is it's often cited as having no major involvement in the global slave trade systems. But please, that does not mean that Japan has not had people as slaves or held them in servitude. South Korea, in terms of the history, had historical class systems like the Nobi, but not racialized slavery like the Americas. In terms of the timeline, servitude systems existed for centuries, but ended in the late 1800s. So it's not a part of the transatlantic slavery or colonial slave systems, but they did have servitude systems which were in fact types of slavery. Thailand, in terms of its history, had debt-based servitude systems, but not plantation slavery. Gradually, it was abolished in the late 1800s under King Chulalongkorn. The reality is it had no major role in the global slave trade, but again, it did have servitude systems, which in a sense is slavery. Ethiopia has had internal slavery systems, but not transatlantic plantation slavery. Being that it is on the eastern part of the African continent, it did not have connections to the transatlantic slave systems. Officially, slavery internally was abolished in 1942. 1942! The reality is there's an important distinction between internal slavery that existed but not race-based global systems, but Ethiopia did have slavery. Nepal had bonded labor systems that existed through its history, and slavery was officially abolished in 1924. So again, no involvement in the transatlantic or colonial slave trade, but it did have slavery. So the idea that no slavery, that a country never had slavery, is almost never fully accurate. It's more about the type, the scale, and global impact. This is just a couple of countries that are just most notable for not participating in the transatlantic slave trade, but in essence, they all had some type of slavery, and you can say that for pretty much every country that existed, there was some type of bondage or servitude or debt-based system where people were subjugated and had less rights. But in terms of the bigger system of how brutal the system of chattel slavery was, these countries are less culpable, had less of an influence or had no relationship to slavery at that time. If you have studied these countries, have you studied Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Ethiopia, Nepal? I'd love to hear in the comments if you've studied anything about their history and know about these servitude systems, these slavery systems of these countries. I'd love to hear a little bit more in the comments so we can get a little dialogue going. Like I said, this isn't we're not pointing fingers here. We're not trying to make these countries feel bad about their history. It's just history, and history is complicated. And if you'd like to talk in a professional manner, in a respectful manner, I'd love to hear your comments. Real quick before you leave, if you enjoyed this video and you like this kind of content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm really building this channel for people who want honest conversations about traveling, living abroad, financial freedom, and just figuring life out outside the box. I'm not your average guy. I occupy quite a lot of identities that are not mainstream. My perspective gives a unique outlook that doesn't always get a voice in popular media, and I appreciate anyone open to hearing my voice, knowledge, and experience. So if that's your vibe, subscribe, join the community, and let's keep exploring together.